Hi, everybody. I could not think of a better way of winding down the Thursday before Halloween than to spend it with all of you. I am Katie Phang. I'm an independent journalist, a trial lawyer, and an unapologetic defender of democracy and a cage rattler here or then. I am thrilled to be able to moderate today's conversation. I don't have to tell all of you that are tuning in right now. We are at an incredible inflection point in our country's history. We are watching under this Trump administration, as I call it, the Trump regime 2.0. We've seen calls to jail political opponents, the weaponization of many branches of our government. We've seen open and direct threats to our journalists, to our fourth estate, its independence. We've also seen threats to peaceful protesters that are just exercising their constitutional rights. There have been deliberate, targeted attacks on our immigrants, the fabric of our country, on our vulnerable communities, and the very institutions and the norms that were designed to be able to protect us and to be able to block this authoritarian regime. And what's worse, from the people, from the entities, from the things that we thought had power to be able to help us in this moment, not only are we seeing silence from some, but sadly, complicity from others. So today's conversation, no doubt, hosted by the ACLU, another fellow avid defender of democracy, another fellow cage rattler, especially when it comes to sky high stakes, when it comes to democracy being on the line. The ACLU isn't backing down. They're not afraid. The ACLU is standing there as a defender of our freedom and of our civil liberties. And that's why today's event is the ACLU, in conjunction with two of the leading voices from civil society, media, and the law. We're going to discuss the threats that we're facing together, and importantly, the power of solidarity when we stand together. And we're going to have calls to action throughout this panel, calls to mobilize, to figure out how we resist in thoughtful and meaningful ways, and to chart a clear path forward for us to act together. So I'm pleased to welcome our all-star panel of speakers. We have Anthony Romero, the executive director of the ACLU. We also have Jim VandeHei, the co-founder and CEO of the amazing Axios. He's also a passionate advocate for free speech and for journalism. And also, I'm honored to spend some time with my friend Vanita Gupta, the founder and director of the Center for Law and Public Trust at NYU School of Law, and a renowned civil rights leader who previously served as the Associate Attorney General of the United States. Please welcome all three of them. And I'm so grateful that you're able to spend time with us. We're going to get this kicked off now with the following. And this is going to go for all of you, and it'll be answered first by Jim, then Vanita, and then by Anthony. Look, since January of this year, we've seen authoritarianism happening in real time and in plain sight. Military troops, the federalization of troops, they are in our streets, in our cities, and our communities. We've seen detentions and deportations without any due process. We've also seen attacks on free speech, like Jimmy Kimmel, for example, being pulled from the air. With so much happening and with such a high level of things being at stake right now, I have to ask, and Jim, like I said, I'm going to start with you. What are the biggest flags, the biggest red flags that you're witnessing for democracy right now?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I come at this not as an activist, but as a reporter and as somebody who tries to look at this stuff clinically, like a doctor. And one of the big themes for us has been just the unprecedented nature in this stretch of the power of the presidency. And I say this if I was talking to a MAGA crowd, or if I was talking to the ACLU, that the reason everybody should care is that the more power you put in the hands of one person, you're taking away the power of all of us, of individuals. The Constitution, the form of government was set up to give us voice through representatives, through our House, through the Senate, and some balance through the judiciary. And what we've seen is this massive consolidation of power in the presidency. This is not new. It's been going on for 25 years, and really even longer. And I think it really accelerated under George W. Bush. I think each and every president has pushed it a little bit further. But what you've seen from Trump is truly unprecedented in that we've counted anywhere from 15 to 20 new precedents of the expression and expansion of the federal government at the expense of Congress, the judiciary, and all of us having a voice. And if I was talking to Trump's crowd, I'd say, listen, that you might feel great now that you're able to utilize this and go after your enemies through DOJ or bully the press as they have with ABC and others. But what happens when you set this precedent is that every future president can do the same. You're basically putting a lot more power in the executive branch. And I've been doing this 30 years. I've never seen a time where a new power has been invented or stretched where the next inhabitant of the office didn't take it a step further or didn't replicate it. And I think that's the danger. That's why I don't care what your politics are. You should care about the fact that we have developed and are increasingly developing an imperial presidency at the expense of people having their own voice heard and their own voice expressed through other means.
Vanita, I'll tee up the same question to you about the biggest red flags to democracy right now, but also maybe invite you to share your thoughts about what Jim just said about an imperial presidency.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. A former ACLU alum and deeply proud of it. So just needed to give the ACLU
that shout out.
So, it's hard to kind of pick, obviously, a single red flag, and I'll pick up from where Jim left off, which is the expansion of the president's power at a time when Congress has basically abdicated its role in government of being a check on the president, of abdicating its own power over the purse, over every time that the president was firing people from agencies without congressional authorization and literally breaking the federal government. Congress has been asleep, and there's a real sense that a real question about the place of the Supreme Court on providing a check to the president right now. I think what the impact of this is that we have seen a president operating with a retribution agenda, going after political enemies, literally going after and demanding that the Justice Department charge his political enemies. And there are several cases going on right now that raise deep alarm for our democratic system about the kind of abuse of presidential power and abuse of institutions that he's able to have without any checks or guardrails around him. But I also think one thing that has not been as much of a front page story, which I know others are deeply alarmed about, is the way in which the president is attacking free speech, core fundamental rights that have been for decades kept Americans, regardless of their political persuasion, even on the most extreme right and extreme left. It has been foundational to our country. And the attacks on free speech, I think, have manifest in ways that are really about fundamentally attacking the dismantling our democratic institutions and the organizations that are seeking to hold the government accountable in court, that are protecting vulnerable communities that are sometimes disfavored by the administration, to essentially silence dissent. And this yielding of that power is extraordinarily dangerous. There have been so many threats to nonprofit organizations over the last several months that truly exist to hold Democratic and Republican administrations accountable to the Constitution and to the law. And I think the Jimmy Kimmel episode was basically a wake-up call for a lot of other people who may not be following kind of what's happening to free speech in this country. We saw it early on in the months of the administration with the attacks on law firms and law firms capitulating to blatantly unconstitutional orders out of fear, and the kind of censorship that's been happening in this country, which I think is incredibly dangerous, which I know we'll be talking about. So this effort to dismantle the very institutions that are holding the government accountable, I think, has been one of the most nefarious things. And it's all being done both in the name of free speech and to silence and ends up silencing free speech.
And Anthony, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you think are the biggest red flags to democracy, especially as you sit in your role as executive director at the ACLU.
Yes, and thank you, Katie. I want to thank you especially for anchoring this town hall for us. I appreciate you giving us your time and your thoughts and your energy. And thanks to Jim and Vanita, who are two good colleagues and friends who have been really instrumental in helping me think through these issues. Jim's columns, which I know he'll talk a little bit about, gave me hope and optimism, and I'm hoping that he'll infuse some of that in this discussion. And Vanita, it's just always great to be with you. You're a remarkable leader, and I'm proud to be associated with your work. Look, the challenges have been laid out pretty well. I mean, what I would just say is that we've been studying the challenges that would come with the Trump administration for months before the moment that President Trump took the oath of office. We studied Project 2025 because we took it both seriously and literally, and really did a deep dive on what those policy pronouncements were promised by Project 2025, which the president said he didn't really consult or even know. And yet, boy, are they following that playbook to the T. And so we issued our own series of concept papers. We called them the Trump memos, taking it apart and analyzing where we would respond and how we would respond. That was essential work that allowed us that once President Trump won the election and took the oath of office, that we could spring into gear in response. And so these challenges, they have literally kept their promise of shock and awe. I mean, it has been hundreds of executive orders. And in response, there has been a shocking and awesome response from civil society in terms of litigation, advocacy, and pushback at the state and local level. And I put the threats into three big buckets. These are the ones that are most concerned to the ACLU. We are not the anti-Trump Liberties Union. We don't swing at every pitch. There are many things that the president does that troubles me as a person, as a citizen, but they're not civil liberties issues. And so other organizations then take the lead on those issues. Groups like Democracy Forward, I think today just filed suit on challenging the cutting of funds for food assistance programs for SNAP. That's terrific. They have played an essential role. That's not a civil liberties issue that we're going to swing at. So I'm really glad that other groups in the field are doing that essential work. But the three buckets that I worry about, number one, Vanita covered it. The targeting of groups and institutions and individuals who disagree with this administration, what I call the modern day McCarthy, right? When they're doubling down and using government power to target those who dare to disagree. And that you can put in that bucket, you can put folks ranging from Harvard University because of allegedly their commitment to DEI or their work on anti-Semitism. You could put the law firms that have been targeted by the president. You could put our clients, Mahmoud Khalil, Rameza Ozturk, Palestinian activists who've been speaking out against the challenges that their community have faced in Palestine and in Israel, and have been threatened with deportation as a result of it. It's this modern day McCarthy where you could put Letitia James, you could put Jim Comey, you can put Jack Smith. You could the bucket number one is full and overflowing at this point, but it's the targeting of individuals who dare to disagree, and it's fundamentally un-American. No matter where you are on the political spectrum, we should relish the fact that people are able to speak their minds and dissent and debate. That's what makes it a working democracy. And the idea that we're allowing the federal government officials to use the power in the institutions of government to target individuals who disagree with them is deeply troubling. Bucket number two, the targeting of politically weak groups as a way to feed the MAGA base, right? And so this is an effort to go after groups that kind of feed the populist agenda that President Trump and his acolytes really get frothed up about. And here I would put the targeting of immigrants, where there's been an effort to deport more than 500,000 immigrants thus far, and to put such pressure on the immigrant community that 1.6 million people will self-deport as a result of the anti-immigrant, the nativistic agenda of Stephen Miller and the Trump administration. And that is deeply concerning because these are individuals and members of a community that don't have political power, who are not able to elect officials who can stand up for their rights. And so when the federal government targets groups that are politically weak, they are the quintessential minority that need to be protected against the whims of the majority. I would also add in there the targeting of the transgender community. Going back from even before he became president, it's clear that they are scapegoating a very small community of people and using it to ratchet up the fear, the stigma, the discrimination, to repeal protections and laws and policies that have protected the transgender rights community. So that's bucket number 2, the targeting of politically weak groups as a way to feed the MAGA base. Targeting number 3, and this is where Jim led off, is the targeting of the institutions, the norms, the system of checks and balances that make this democracy work. And it's everything from the free press and the way they have gone after, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, ABC News, an effort to try to cudgel the press to be either acquiescent or quiet. The way they have gone after judges, both in their political pronouncements, but also in their policy pronouncements. The way they have tried to thumb their nose at judges like Judge Boasberg, who in our Alien Enemies Act case told them, turn the planes back, do not deport these men. And they just let it go. And that contempt for judicial review is deeply concerning. And then it could add in the kind of efforts to override Congress and the power of Congress and the purse. There's a lot that's at play, and these rules of the road that undergird a system of checks and balances of 3 co-equal branches of government, this effort to kind of put the unitary executive or the imperial executive on steroids is going to come back to haunt democracy writ large, no matter what party is in power. So those are the 3 big buckets that we are largely concerned about.
Anthony, I just have a really quick follow-up on that, though, and I'm glad you mentioned checks and balances, because if there's any branch of government that's actually been the go-to, it's been our court of law, it's been our judiciary, right?
You bet.
But there's understandable concern by those of us that are lawyers and even those that are not about whether or not the constitutional guardrails will hold up. We've seen district court judges, trial court judges, and federal court that have been issuing rulings, to your point, that have been disregarded, disobeyed, non-compliance, right? Do you have a fear at all that those guardrails are going to withstand this type of attack?
Yeah, and I certainly do. And I invite certainly Vanita and Jim also to chime in if they have thoughts as well on this issue, because we're all students of the law, and I would love to hear your own thoughts, Katie, as a lawyer and as someone who watches really close attention. Obviously I'm concerned, right? So far, we have turned to the courts as the primary bulwark of defending against the worst of the excesses of the Trump administration. The ACLU itself has filed over 210 different legal actions, right? More than 110 federal class action lawsuits already. We turn to the courts as a primary place to say, wait a minute, check them, hold them, take it back. And thus far, what has been increasingly the case is that we've won, as you mentioned, at the district court level, even at the courts of appeal level. And our success rate, our scorecard, which I keep on our litigators' efforts, they hate it when I do this, but I can't help myself. I'm kind of competitive and I want to know how I'm doing, is I would say 70% of our litigation thus far at the district court and courts of appeals levels have been very successful, right, where we get serious forms of relief. And we're trying to either dilute the government programs, we're trying to delay them from going into effect. Sometimes you're just playing for time and you figure throw that sand in the machinery and slow it up. And sometimes we were hoping to defeat them. And I think we will defeat the Trump administration on some of these important pronouncements, like the birthright citizenship, when it goes up ultimately before the Supreme Court. I think we win on the merits. Now, there have been heartbreaks, especially at the Supreme Court level on the shadow docket, where there's been increasingly, I have been concerned that the court has not stood up as with the same level of vigor that I would like them to have done. And yet that remains to be seen, how those chapters and what that coda looks like when these cases end up in front of the court, fully briefed, fully argued. They have to write opinions that will create precedent. Whether or not they will stand with us on things like birthright citizenship or the Alien Enemies Act litigation, I'm relatively confident about those two. There are other places where it's really to be determined. But I don't know, Vanita, if you have anything to add, or Jim.
Yeah, I mean, look, I want to applaud the ACLU, because I think both in terms of being mission focused and bringing some of the most important litigation to try to achieve relief and protect vulnerable communities and uphold the Constitution. It has been really quite incredible to see. I have a lot of concerns, though, about, every time a district court is issuing a ruling against the Trump administration, so often you see members of the administration, including sometimes the president, attacking very personally district court judges. I have many friends that are serving as district court judges that have received incredible death threats. I mean, stuff that is just not okay for a healthy democracy. To be attacking the kind of third branch of government that is been, in our Constitution, is tasked very specifically with evaluating the legality and constitutionality of the executive branch's moves. And I have a very big concern about the shadow docket of the Supreme Court. I think Anthony is right to point out some of the cases where we are hopeful and keeping our fingers crossed around outcomes. But there's also been some important losses that, have been really troubling in many ways on the shadow docket. And so I think litigation has been our main tool the last several months. It's been critically important. But I also think now we have to understand that we are also voters, and we have to kind of think about the other ways in which we are consumers of the media. We have to understand our own role in shaping our democracy, while the lawyers, such as those at the ACLU, are working hard 24 hours a day, filing lawsuits and vindicating rights, that there's a shared power that exists outside of the courtroom. And I that was what was so kind of heartening to me about the No Kings rally, Katie, was just seeing that energy. And I think litigation can be an important vehicle for telling stories. It's sometimes really hard to make people understand the harms of what is happening. I live in Washington, D.C., so I'm surrounded by federal employees who've lost their jobs or who've been dismissed because they refuse to obey illegal orders and the like. But I think we have to do a better job of making people understand kind of the real harms about what's happening right now. And I think litigation can sometimes be that way, but the attacks on the very machinery that we have relied on and that we rely on to vindicate rights is something that we must all reject resoundingly and should not be a partisan issue whatsoever.
Yeah, and I appreciate those thoughts, Vanita, because it actually leads us to the next part of our discussion that I wanted to raise, and I wanted to bring in Jim on this because, look, we just heard from Anthony. I'm grateful for this and the insight from all of you that the courts are the place where we're fighting these things out, but it takes bravery, it takes people, it takes plaintiffs, it takes incredible lawyers like at the ACLU to be able to fight this. And then we've seen people that perhaps, Jim, are not bringing their best selves to this battle, that perhaps are not deciding to be, I guess, on a particular side in history when it comes to what's at stake. And I want to ask you specifically about the media, something that you and I know very and intimately well. It's not just the big law firms, it's not just the universities. We're seeing some capitulation, some bending of the knee in the media right now. I'd like to hear your thoughts about this, Jim. Is it, as we heard from Vanita, is it fear of retribution? Because there was the I will be your retribution president. We heard that before Trump was elected. Is it simply just a profits over people analysis that's happening? Let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big cases that we're all familiar with, they tend to be big media companies that are either thinking about mergers, thinking about business activity, or worried about the legal costs. And they're making a business calculation, and they're not making the decision to stand up for freedom of the press or intimidation of media companies. And as you've mentioned, it's not at all isolated to media. You've seen this across law firms. You've seen this in business in particular. You're seeing it with universities. There's just a lot of pressure that's put on these entities by the government and then by people who are supportive of Trump. And there's just a massive, certainly on the business side, a massive financial incentive to just go along and try to ride with the system and try to profit off of the system. And so you've just ended up in this very unusual place, and an unfortunate place, right? Because at the end of the day, it is fundamentally about protecting those freedoms that have been core to everybody for 250 years. And there's a reason that people have fought to defend them. And I think it's a hard time for the country, right? Because we talk a lot about Trump, and there's no doubt, I'm not trying to diminish the effect of Trump on the U.S., but I think when people think about their anxiety, when people think about how nervous they are in general, it's not just that you have this once-in-a-century change in political tactics and political ideology. At the same time, you have this once-in-a-century change in technology, which is AI, which might end up being a bigger deal than the Trump administration. And you also, at the same time, have this once in a century change in how your reality is formed. My industry, your industry. On any given day, you could have everybody who's on this call. There might be a bunch of us who are visiting platforms that no one else on this call or on this event ever visited, or trust people that the other people have never heard of. And so we're really in this area where you have these three big shifts happening simultaneously. And I think they kind of rub into each other. And a lot of them allow new tools and tactics of intimidation and of manipulation. Right. And I think that's why you see so many people tuning out, so many people confused about what's real and not real. And then some people just cowardly saying, you know what, I don't want to be part of this fight. I don't want to have my name dragged through the mud on social media. I don't want people harassing me at my house, because these tactics work. You've seen it. It's not, it's harder to find people who stood up, who've made the fight, than it is to name all the people who said, you know, the hell with it, I'm going to sit at home and do nothing.
Yeah, and Vanita, quickly, I wanted to know your thoughts about this because, look, it's prevalent now, right? To Jim's well-taken point, it's like you can actually count on one hand the people, especially in those bigger positions where, frankly, they could financially afford to take, a stand in this. You can count them on one hand, the people that are really, or the entities that are saying, we are going to stand up to what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's honestly been one of the things that I failed to completely comprehend in anticipating this administration was truly the depth and level and pervasiveness of fear, self-censorship, capitulation that we have seen. And it's not just, I mean, so, Jim listed them, obviously the law firms were the biggest slap in the face for those of us that are lawyers. It was very clear that all of these orders targeting law firms were completely unconstitutional, but to see law firms cave the way that they did, lawyers who know the law, who understand the Constitution, caving, I think was a real eye opener, but it has affected people across industries, as Jim has said. And it has been astonishing to me that institutions that are supposed to be out there fighting for our values, put the companies in corporate America aside. I'm saying institutions that actually do this work day in and day out, thinking that they can get through by laying low and by staying silent in this moment. But this is how democracy dies, is when people feel so cowed that they lose their voice, they suppress it, and they just kind of hope and pray that they're going to get through without making themselves a target. Now, a lot of other organizations like the ACLU don't have that privilege, nor would they ever stand for it. But I think this has been something that's been profoundly troubling. I think Jim's right to point out to AI. I think the level of polarization and kind of mistrust in our institutions is also a contributing factor. I will say, though, that after these many months, the thing that has been heartening to me is I am beginning to see a little bit more courage out there, and people beginning to recognize in some places that they're not going to get through this just by laying low, that it's actually going to take rolling up our sleeves and taking a stand and being strategic and thoughtful, but taking a stand. And so I'm seeing that a little bit more. But the level of fear, I think, and the kind of bullying success of the administration has been something that will be written about in the history books for a long time. But my hope is that we will also remember all those who stood up for our country and our Constitution.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, Vanita, this idea that you're starting to see a shift in that energy, because we wanted to make sure in this discussion today that we talked about the power of solidarity and to take collective action together. But there was one kind of nuanced area, which really shouldn't be nuanced, and it really should probably stop people dead on their tracks right now, which is our NGOs, our nonprofits. And it's kind of not really hit the headlines as much as it deserves. And I just wanted to quickly get your thoughts on this, Vanita, because, there is direct targeting, and We heard this from Anthony in his three buckets earlier, but there's also direct targeting of progressive nonprofit groups. And there's these lies that are being perpetrated saying that they are aiding and abetting violence and terrorism right now. And this administration has said that they are actually tasking parts of the administration to go after and to pursue. And it's really meant to silence free speech, as we've heard here, this idea of expressing your dissent with and your dissatisfaction with what's going on. Talk about the NGO Solidarity Network, though, and why it's so important to see the nonprofits come together to fight back.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that the only way through these attacks on institutions is really through collective action. And I learned this firsthand just watching the law firms get attacked one by one, where they weren't engaging in collective action. This is like a classic collective action problem. And so back in the spring, Anthony and I and some others were noticing the increased kind of volume by the administration of threats against nonprofit organizations that, as I said, that are holding the administration to account in the court, and that are promoting speech and trying to protect vulnerable communities right now. And I launched, with the support of nonprofit leaders around the country, the NGO Solidarity Network, really comprised of senior executives from across the country that are working in nonprofit organizations that every community in the country relies on, from food banks to defending the rule of law to religious organizations and churches that are providing immigrant communities with food, et cetera. And we launched it out of a recognition that that an attack on one of us was an attack on all. A lot of these organizations, they do very different kinds of work. There's ideological diversity, but there's a real recognition that solidarity is the only way to be able to defend our sector and defend the work that our organizations do, that civil society does for this country. And the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk kind of emboldened the administration to in his name issue executive orders that were kind of re-energizing this threats environment. And the president issued presidential memorandums saying in the name of national security that the directing agencies, including the Justice Department, to go after organizations that are doing exactly what you said, which is defending the rule of law in vulnerable communities. And the good news is this infrastructure that we have built to share threats, to share information about how to make our sector more resilient, and to strategize about how to show solidarity, that if one organization gets attacked, should another organization be able to absorb its staff so that the important work of the organization can continue. Because we know from the authoritarian playbook around the country that authoritarians want organizations that are holding it to account to basically get 100% involved in self-protection, such that they cannot do the work that they're supposed to do every day. And so this has been an important space, and I think an important model for this moment about how a sector can actually respond. But it is a very challenging one. These are organizations on the front lines, but I do believe that the solidarity and the spirit of that is something that I think is contagious.
Anthony, talking about being on the front lines of this, it's the ACLU. Kind of share with everybody right now the role of the ACLU and the broader ACLU community in all of this.
Well, we are part of a bigger ecosystem. And I just really want to thank Vanita for that leadership on the NGO Solidarity Network. It's when she first broached it with several of us who were involved in the early days, it made such great sense. None of us could have the bandwidth to think about it or to bring it together. The idea that we are in this together, and if we don't do this as a united front, we're going to lose. So this NATO for NGOs is brilliant. It's the best thing I have seen. I've been in my job for 24 years. I have never seen this level of sharing information, sharing of donors, sharing of strategy. Today, Vanita, I got a text message from someone on our Signal chat saying, "Hey, I have a problem. Can you help me with blank?" And I'm like, got it. I never knew this person before. And I still never met this person. But we are all in a way that if they want to shock and awe us, we are shocking and awesome, right? So I just want to say that it is, the ACLU alone can't do this. It's way too big. And we are really going to try to stick to our lane, We're going to do our best work by being thoughtful, methodical, and going deep. But there needs to be a broader response of which we are definitely a part of. And having the leadership of Vanita and her colleagues like this is really essential. It's been one of the most galvanizing things that we've been a part of. The other part of it I've seen is also the fact that people want to be engaged. And, the folks, the ACLU, we're based on it. We're a membership organization. Half my budget comes from the ordinary rank and file. Thank God. The ordinary folks who are tuning into this YouTube channel, the average gift, about 80 to $100, comprises half of our entire national budget. And it is what allows us the flexibility and the energy and the independence. And those folks want to be put to work. They may send us $20 and they say, now put us to work. And so we have developed this whole program that we call Firewall for Freedom, which is a way for local folk to put pressure on their mayors, their city councils, their attorneys general, their governors to do the right thing. And so this federalist system that we've got, where the federal government's power is circumscribed by design. And so the real power lies in a lot of the states and the governors and local elected officials. And part of what we've been able to do is galvanize our base, our folks, and say, hey, money's great, but we need you to put more than money in. We need you to put sweat equity into this effort. And we need you to push this agenda and force these elected officials to reconcile themselves to what's happening and what they need to do to protect folks. And I think that's been an essential part of what we've tried to do, is not just the lawyers are not going to solve this problem. This is a problem for the country, for the body politic. It's a matter for the American people to engage. This is not a spectator sport. I mean, this is not the Super Bowl. We need folks to get onto the field on this one. And so that's why things like our Firewall for Freedom, efforts where local NGOs, I love the No Kings marches, not my idea, not my framing, but Indivisible, really front and center on it. We got behind them like a freight train saying, okay, we could organize our bodies, our people. We could have legal observers. We could have people monitoring to make sure that these protests stay safe and that they're lawful and they're getting the permits that they need. And when they threaten law enforcement efforts on these marches, we'll be right there to kind of litigate and to challenge these. And so I think this is really a kind of a remarkable moment, and it requires a level of citizen-based activism. I also think the immigration issue is beginning to turn. Increasingly, you have people who are saying, wait a minute, this is not what you promised us. You said that we would deport the drug traffickers, the cartels, the sex traffickers. They're picking up ordinary folk, and the 500,000 people they deported, most of them don't have criminal records. And so that's why groups like United We Dream, another great effort, they created this thing called Defending Our Neighbors Fund, which is to collect money from ordinary folk to pay for individual lawyers to represent immigrants who are being deported or being detained, to get them out on bond, to get them local lawyers. None of this money comes to the ACLU. This is all to local direct service providers. And Defending Our Neighbors Fund is going to be a crowdsourced effort on behalf of immigrants from other concerned Americans. And already they've raised $13 million. It's phenomenal. So I think there's a lot that's at play, and it doesn't always get the headlines, but I think it shows that people really are concerned the way they ought to be.
Anthony, one of the special gifts of the ACLU is the fact that it really channels the grassroots activism that you're talking about, the community-based activism you've been talking about. I think you've got a pretty amazing video that you're going to share.
Yeah,
with
they
the
just
people
showed it to me today. So we have this video, which I love. It's about our People Power program, which is the one that's powering all of this Firewall for Freedom work. So why don't we show it, if that's okay? Someone in the control room. I don't know how to do that.
We're going to toss to it now.
This is ACLU People Power.
ACLU People Power.
ACLU People Power.
A grassroots community of people
who believe in something
bigger than ourselves. In a moment when rights are under attack.
When our communities are targeted.
And our democracy hangs in the balance. We don't back down. We show up for each other.
They want us divided, silenced, afraid.
But when we organize, we're unstoppable.
This is what democracy looks like. In every corner of the country. We learn, grow, and we take actions together. Because real power lives in
community.
And together we're all
building a world we know is possible.
In every state, in every jurisdiction, people can just sign up for free. We will give you the resources, we will staff it, we will unleash it. The whole goal is to not control it, but to let it really grow organically. So aclu.org/volunteer, and they can sign up for People Power.
Anthony, I love that video. I love the energy. I know the ACLU is offering a very real, tangible solution. We have to be driven towards solutions, but we always speak in transparency and honesty here. And people are doing what we're asking them to do. No King's Day 2.0. They're signing up to volunteer with the ACLU, but it's hard. Let's be frank. And because of that, I really kind of wanted to go to Jim on this one, because Jim, back in August, you wrote this incredible message, and you wrote it to college kids, and you were like, look, these are college students and they're looking for the hope, the optimism, the purpose to be able to navigate this climate, this environment of toxicity in our politics, the distorted media, the AI-driven disinformation and misinformation that you've talked about. Fast forward just a few months. Jim, are you still standing by that message that you sent out in August?
I don't change my mind that quickly. No, listen, I understand why people are unnerved, and I understand why people are anxious. That said, I come at this as someone who has two boys in college and a daughter who just recently graduated. I'm a CEO of a company of about 500 people, probably 65 to 70% are under the age of 40. So I think about this topic a lot, about like, where are we and kind of where did we come from? And what I try to tell college kids is like, yes, this moment is definitely, you're living history. Like intellectually, you are literally living history between AI, media changing, politics. You are part of history. You know, FDR talked about your rendezvous with destiny. Congratulations, this is your rendezvous with destiny. Some generations have it harder than others, so there's a lot on your plate. What I try to remind people, and especially remind younger people, is like, listen, number one, like this is a really awesome country. Like in this moment, it might not feel that way to some people. It is an amazing experiment. The fact that we're 250 years next year from the Declaration of Independence, and that somehow there's like this magic of the combination of freedom and democracy and voting and capitalism and animal spirits that kind of mix together to create this potion that allows this country to be the place where all good ideas, or most good ideas, come from, where other people look to for how should you live and how should we think about things, and look to us for defense even now in moments of danger. Like that's an awesome thing. And you're sitting in a country that, yes, like in any given moment you can say this sucks or that's bad, but you're in some ways, if you just look at the fundamentals of the country, it's actually never been better. Right? You have more energy than at any point in humanity. We have safety of our two oceans and two neighbors that are friendly to us. The innovation spirits, AI, whether you like it or dislike it, it's largely driven by American innovation. It's still the best place to start a company. It's still one of the easiest places to move around and create wealth for most people. And yes, like it's not as easy for everyone, but if you just look at it on a whole, like we've got a lot to work with. And the message I really want to pound with a lot of people is we're all being manipulated into thinking that we hate each other. It's just not true. I'm sorry. I think if you look at cable TV or you look at social media, they're both programmed to make you think that everyone hates each other, everyone's nuts, everyone's polarized, everyone's hopeless, nothing can be fixed. That is a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the American people. Tiny percent. Most people have never been on X. 75% of people, nowhere near it. 98% of people don't watch cable news at night. Most people have a life. They're going to church, or they're going to their community, and they're raising their kids, and they're helping their grandparents, and they're doing the things that normal people do. And where I get my hope from, as someone who grew up in Wisconsin, is lucky enough to travel a decent amount in the capacity as a journalist and a guy who runs a media company, is I am 100% convinced that 80% of this country agrees 80% of the time on 80% of things. They might not have a voice right now. They might be silenced. But if you look through history, and there's been worse periods than this, there's no way you're going to convince me that this is worse than the Great Depression. You're not going to convince me this is worse than the Civil War. There have been many periods that had to, in that moment, feel completely hopeless, completely unfixable, and somehow we fixed it. Well, how did it get fixed? It got fixed because those people who aren't the loudmouths in politics, who aren't lighting up your social media feed, the people who are the backbone of the country, they eventually rise up. They eventually fix things. And if you're talking about activism, vote. Your presidential elections, your winner wins with 30% of eligible voters between the people who didn't vote and the people whose vote that they lost. The last 3 presidential elections, give or take, were decided by about 200,000 votes in 3 different states. 50,000 in one election, up to 250 in another. The congressional majority, the last 2 elections, came down to 15,000 votes in one, 12,000 in another, in 6 districts and in 5 districts. So when you say your vote doesn't count, what are you talking about? We've never had more volatility in the political system. We've never had more change. Democracy, you might feel like it's dying. It's not dead. It is alive. There will be an election. There'll be elections in some of the states next week, but then there will be a year from now. There's no reason that Democrats can't win back control. When they do, Trump can do all he wants. States seat the members, unless you're going to rise up the military and go to war, which I just don't think the president's going to do. You could easily win back the majority. And so I encourage people to take the longer view. And hopelessness sucks, right? If you're not hopeful, if don't have some optimism, if you don't have some faith in the people that you're around, then that's no way to live. It's a bad way to live. And I'll just leave you with this, that if you say I'm nuts about, most people are normal, I do this at universities, I do this with businesses, I do this with family, I do this with friends. In a given year, you meet 200, 250 people that you get to know well enough that you could appraise their character. Are they decent people? Do they give money? Do they help out? Would they volunteer? And every person I've ever asked that question of, they're like, oh yeah, that's 90, 95% of the people in my life. You think you're that special that you're the only person who happen to stumble in to being surrounded by normal people? I think that is most of the country. And political movements start there. It starts with young people. It starts with old people. It starts with people who haven't been involved in politics. It bubbles up, and ultimately we self-correct. I don't know when, I don't know how, but history has shown that I'm probably going to be right.
I'm gonna take that to the bank, Jim. I'm gonna hope for the best too. And Vanita, I want to just follow up with you and get some of your final thoughts on this because and then to Anthony, because I want to pull on a thread that Jim just said, Vanita, which is militating towards optimism. Because I do believe when people are activated and engaged and they have a common purpose that Jim did speak of when he was talking to those college kids back in August, when you have that hope and that purpose, it does give you the drive to sit there and assess. Again, to Jim's point, how am I assessing what I am facing right now? And how do I deploy that if I am looking at it from a long-term view? So Vanita, your thoughts.
Yeah, I believe very strongly that despair and cynicism is not an option, and that it is a tool of the privileged to sit around and be cynical and count yourself out and think that you don't have power and who cares. And I get the fatigue, I really do, as somebody who has been in this work, not as long as Anthony, but a few decades, I get that. But I think in this moment, the greatest act of patriotism is to want to make your country better and to build that community to get it done. And the only thing that has ever made progress, and remember, our country emerged out of slavery and Jim Crow, the only thing that has ever made change in this country is people rolling up their sleeves and figuring out how to engage. And there are so many different ways to engage, and there won't be a single event that catalyzes change. It is going to take all of us working every day in our own communities. It can be locally in our churches and in our community organizations, at our schools. It can be with our members of Congress demanding that they actually, appreciate the institution that they are a part of and ensure that it is exercising its power. It's voting and exercising, of course, your voice through the vote or showing up at No King's marches, et cetera. This is Democracy, and this is what Congressman John Lewis said, democracy is not a state, it is an act, and we have to act every day. And there are countless ways that people need to do it. So I am, look, I'm a profoundly hopeful person. I think that there is so much energy that exists, that is building community, and courage is contagious. And I firmly believe that. And so I think that we are absolutely going to get through this, but the only reason we will get through is because all of us understand the power that we have in small and big ways to actually roll up our sleeves and do the work.
And Anthony, your final thoughts on this?
No, I mean, this is a perfect way to close. I mean, when we first were talking about this at the ACLU, Katie, this was the town hall of hope. And I remember there was that August when I logged in, I read Jim's byline all the time. And then he was writing about hope and optimism. I needed that shot of adrenaline. Boy, that was a day where I was just like, wow. And then it just gave me the jolt of like, yes, this is to reboot the frame. And so much of what we've got to do. And then when Vanita pulled together the NGO Solidarity Network and said, we're not going down one by one. We're not in isolation. We're in this together. And we're all going to pull this through. That level of optimism that these two individuals infused in me, I want to infuse back out to the ACLU membership, because some of my folks, oh my God, there's doom and gloom. I'm in the subway, or I'm in the supermarket, or I'm at an event last night where it was an arts event. I was just there because my mother-in-law dragged me to the event. So much doom and gloom, and I just like, no. We've got to pump people up. We've got to give them a sense that this is really possible. And yes, the ACLU is doing essential work, and people should be engaged with us, and people should sign up and become volunteers, and they should support Democracy Forward. They should support the food banks, people who are being cut off of SNAP and food assistance programs. We got to get food to people, right? People are going to go hungry today and tomorrow because the government shut down, because our government prefers to turn its back on its own citizens. Right? But the idea that we don't cede that hope and optimism. People ask me, and I'll be quiet after this one, are we in a constitutional crisis? And I take a pause, and I just try to make sure I make eye contact and I'm connected to the person. I said, we are, if you accept it. And we're not, if you resist it. And the idea that you have agency, you have role, you have a responsibility, you got skin in this game, and so let's play it, is got to be the message we give out to folks. And we'll do our part. Jim is going to do his part. Byline's great. People should sign up and watch, read it. Vanita, people should follow her to hell and back. That's what I've done, and it's always worked out. I end up in places much better than hell. I end up in places like heaven. And people should just be involved in organizations like the ACLU and the local communities. We should follow journalists like you, Katie, who are doing their very best to make sure they frame these issues well for us, but don't bludgeon us with sadness and depression and cynicism, because that gets you nowhere. So that's really the only way forward is forward. The only way through is through. And we'll do this together.
I don't even think thank you covers how grateful I am for all of you as the panelists to be with me today, and with everybody who has tuned in on YouTube and that will be watching later. All of you as panelists, as humans, as people, as Americans, your bravery, your courage, your expertise, your willingness to be in the fight that Anthony just spoke about, that's where we are, and you are meeting the moment. And so I'm very grateful to all of you. So thank you to the three of you, Anthony, Vanita, and Jim, for spending your time with us today. For everyone else tuning in, look, this is not a moment to navel gaze. This is a moment to recommit. There's a reason why you are seeing aclu.org/volunteer. The ACLU, they are on the front lines. They are in the court of law. They are fighting in the court of public opinion. They are in the streets. They're doing everything to defend your rights, and they will show up each and every time to make sure you are protected. And so whether you're going to donate, you're going to volunteer, you're going to organize, you're going to get involved, that is what the ACLU is calling to you to do. That is the call to action. aclu.org/volunteer. Your voice matters, and collectively our voices will raise up together. We have done this before. We have faced dark times, as Jim VandeHei said. We have been able to tackle this, as Vanita Gupta has noted. And as Anthony Romero has reminded all of us, we are in this together alongside coalition partners like the ACLU. So I am Katie Phang. I am grateful for the privilege of your time. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourselves, but also take care of each other. Have a good night.